I'll volunteer.
Mike, thank you.
Okay. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. Roll call, please, Tiana.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes, here.
Councilmember Losi,
Here.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. All right, thank you. Our first presentation tonight is a mid-year budget presentation by our Finance Director, Aaron Finley. Aaron.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. So tonight I do have a presentation that I'm going to go ahead and share with everyone. And you should be able to see it on your screen now. Let me know if not. So tonight we're going to go over the 2021 mid-year budget review. The intent of this report and discussion is to review activities for the first half of this fiscal year, in this case July through December of 2020, and provide a revised projection of revenues and expenditures to fiscal year end. This will enable staff and council to make more informed decisions through the remainder of the fiscal year and while preparing the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Additionally, the formal submittal of a review during the fiscal year provides an opportunity to identify and present any fiscal problem areas to the council and to recommend corrective action or additional funding if required. As part of this discussion, staff is not recommending making any budget adjustments to the current adopted budget. Any proposed supplemental budget adjustments by staff will come before council as a separate item and for discussion before the council. So before we dive into fiscal year 2021's mid-year numbers, I wanted to review how fiscal year 1920 ended. I will note that the fiscal year is not yet finalized. We are waiting for interest statements from the county for April, May, and June. And then we have to subsequently do some GASB or Governmental Accounting Standard Board accounting adjustments that will need to be made before we can finalize the fiscal year. But depending on how much interest the city receives from the county pool, the final number should be pretty close to what you see under net sources or uses, which is $100,712 for fiscal year 1920. So compared to fiscal year 1819, recurring revenues, which includes main contributors such as sales tax, property tax, and transient occupancy tax, decreased by 0.7% or $39,000. That's on the first row here. Overall, total sources of funds for the city's general fund increased by 10%. You can see that, $620,000. However, all of that increase is due to sources that are not a recurring tax or fee, which means the city does not anticipate seeing those in future fiscal years. And in this case, it represents the sale of city-owned property at 280 12th Street in October of 2019 for $875,000. So moving down to our expenses, salary and benefits increased by approximately 1.7% or $65,000 from fiscal year 1819 to 1920. This rate was lower than expected, which can be attributed to a higher level of vacancies in fiscal year 1920 than we had in fiscal year 1819. Capital outlay increased by $662,000, and this was due to the purchase of 2600 and 2650 Runnerville Road, which is where the Police Operations Division building is currently at, and that cost was approximately $700,000. So looking at the bottom line for fiscal year 1920, we are expected to end with a net surplus of $100,000, which is about $50,000 less than the previous year, but it's still great news for the city that we ended the year with a surplus. So now going into our fiscal year 2021 mid-year numbers, we're going to take a look at the, revenues for July through December. Property tax and property tax in lieu revenues, those are the first two lines. They come in two installments, one in January and one at the end of the fiscal year. We have yet to receive those, so I don't have a good estimate on where we are trending versus our budget. And following a meeting with our sales tax consultants on January 14th, staff is now estimating an increase in our Bradley Burns sales tax of $275,000 for the fiscal year. So this was great news. The city's sales tax receipts from July 2020 through September 2020 were 7.8% higher than July 2019 through September 2019. However, local sales tax were actually down 0.6% in the city limits. But the fact that online sales continue to generate large amounts of tax for the use pool, which is collected for the entire county and then distributed based on each city's total population, that pool grew by nearly 65%. And this jump in pool receipts turned the decline of 0.6% into a nearly 8% gain. However, the 0.6% decline is something the city will want to continue to monitor, as this has to do with businesses located in the city and has a larger impact on our local economy due to things such as job creation than online sales do. You can see our transient occupancy tax. We're projecting a $25,000 increase over what we had budgeted. However, that $500,000 that we're estimating is significantly lower than our historical trends. We're usually in the 600,000s. Our Parks and Recreation, you can see the decrease of 88,000. That is due to the Parks and Rec department being unable to do all of their recreation programs and activities that they would normally do and rent out their facilities. So that is primarily due to COVID. At the beginning of the fiscal year, when we were putting together the adopted budget, we were hoping that we would be able to open those programs back up in January, and it's not looking like any of those are going to be able to open back up through the rest of this fiscal year. So that's why we see that $88,000 decrease. The increase in police revenue of $52,000 can be attributed to the capture of multiple years worth of abandoned vehicle abatement costs that are received through the county. And the increase in other revenue is largely due to the receipts of almost $150,000 from the state, and that was for the COVID-19 related expenses through what was called the State's Budget Act. And so overall, you can see that our general fund revenues are on pace to outperform the city's original estimates that were included in the adopted budget by $480,000. So now onto the expenditure side. We see here going through the top of the list, most of our departments are estimated to finish the fiscal year close to what was included in the adopted budget. The two major exceptions are the Police Department and Parks and Recreation Department. So the Police Department is estimated to go over budget by $168,000. A large portion of this increase is attributable to the Police Department time budget, which is estimated to increase by $160,000. In years past, the Police Department has seen overtime come in above budget. However, the department had pay and benefit savings from vacant positions to offset the increase in those years. This year has been a bit different, as the department has been fully staffed for a large portion of the year, but with 2 officers taking part in the field training program and another that went out on extended leave, it left the department with shifts that needed to be filled with overtime, while they still had to pay those 3 officers for their regular pay. The Parks and Rec Department is anticipated to come in $72,000 under budget due to not being able to offer as robust recreation programs as I explained on the revenue side. And so the decrease in expenses of $72,000 is largely offset by the decrease in revenue that we saw on the previous slide. So overall, general fund expenditures are on pace to exceed the city's original estimates that were included in the adopted budget by $78,000. So now that we've looked at the detail of our revenues and expenditures separately, I put them together here on this slide to see where we're going to come out at the bottom line. And so as part of the budget that was adopted back in June 2020, the city anticipated needing to pull $191,000 from reserves in order to balance the general fund budget. And now we are anticipating having $175,000 surplus in the general fund and not having to pull from reserves. This swing in almost $400,000 to the general fund is mostly due to the increases in revenues from our sales tax, which was $275,000, and the one-time COVID revenues received from the state, which was almost $150,000. So that concludes the general fund. Now I'm going to go ahead and review our two main enterprise funds, which is the water fund and wastewater fund. So first, the water fund. Revenues in the water fund remain stable and easy to project as ratepayers have not seen a rate increase since fiscal year 2010-2011, and revenues only increase as additional connections are made to the system. The water fund is projected to have operational savings of a little over $32,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year. And however, even with those operational savings, the water funds are projected to end the year with a deficit of over $372,000. It is important to keep in mind, however, that the projects listed on this slide, which are estimated at $488,000, are paid from the water fund's capital reserve fund, which currently has a total balance of approximately $5 million, and that balance was paid before by debt service bond issuances. So we can kind of take that $488,000 out of the picture. We would have about $100,000 surplus in the water fund. So the wastewater fund is a very similar story. You can see our revenues come in very stable, very consistent from year to year. We haven't seen a rate increase for our wastewater rates since fiscal year 2010-2011 as well. The wastewater funds do anticipate operational savings of almost $162,000. That is mostly due to some reductions in fines that we were able to work out, as well as some salary savings. And again, even with those savings, the funds are anticipated to run a deficit of over $1.66 million. However, like the water fund, the projects of $2.1 million are paid out of a special wastewater fund's capital reserve fund, which has a total approximate balance of $10 million. So to conclude the mid-year presentation today, I'd like to review the city's upcoming steps in the fiscal year 21-22 budget preparation. So at the March 16th Measure Committee meeting, departments are going to present the proposed Measure funded items to the Measure Committee, and they'll be able to ask questions of staff. And historically at that meeting, we present projects that are well above how much revenue we get. And so we give the Measure Committee a couple of weeks to go through those projects and kind of prioritize which ones they would like to fund, which ones they want to try and cut or reduce in funding. And then we reconvene on April 6th, and that's where the Measure Committee will meet to finalize their committee's recommendations and what they are going to recommend that the City Council include in the proposed budget. And then in late April, our goal is to have our first special council meeting and do a proposed budget workshop that details our general funds and the departments within our general fund. And then in early May, we'll have a second budget workshop, and we'll go over our enterprise funds, which is water, wastewater, and transit. And then if need be, that leaves us some time in mid-May or the end of May to schedule a third budget workshop if we need to, like we did last year. And then we'll come back in June at a regular council meeting and adopt the final budget. Staff is also anticipating bringing forward for council consideration, making an additional discretionary payment to CalPERS, which the council has done once before, with some of the surplus funds from fiscal year 1920 and anticipated surplus funds from fiscal year 2021. Staff will be bringing more information on this at the next regular council meeting or the first meeting in March. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to go back to any slides or answer any questions if the council has any.
Anyone have questions for Aaron?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Going back to the slide for fiscal year 2021 revenues, the decrease of 0.6%, is that including restaurants?
That is all businesses that are located within the city limits. So yeah, anything that we receive sales tax from, which includes restaurants and hotels, that's one sector of our sales tax group is included in that negative 0.6%, but it also includes everything, hardware stores and gas stations and everything else.
Okay. And then I know you said it's hard to predict the property tax and property tax in lieu figures, but I wonder if Bradley Burns has any conversation going on regarding the recent passage of Proposition 19, and if that's going to be a negative or a positive or a neutral impact on our property tax revenues.
Yeah, we did have a meeting with our HDL consultant who does our property tax for us, and he gave initial estimates that we're not going to see anything in the short term, and that they are going to put together some more information for the cities for this next budget cycle on some potential longer term impacts. But at the time, he did not anticipate any short term effects. So it'll take many years to play out before anything really changes.
Okay. Last question for me regarding the police expenditures. The field training program, is that a one-time expense? Is that something that we had some people cycle out of that program and we had to retrain some new guys, or is this going to be an ongoing, we need to think about budgeting for it type of expense?
So the field training program is any time that we hire a new officer out of the academy. They have, and Matt could probably give more of the details for us, but the officers have to go through a certain period of time where they're essentially shadowing another officer, learning the job. And so when they're doing that, we're obviously not utilizing that officer on their own. They're with another officer, so that open shift that they would normally be filling on their own has to be filled with overtime. So anytime we have new hires, they have to get trained, and it takes some time to do that.
So is it safe to say that it's something we should have anticipated as we filled our staff positions, and now it's something that hopefully we don't have to continue to budget for now that our staff is a fully staffed police department?
Yeah, I think it's something to consider with the next budget, is if we want to anticipate there always being at least one officer who's on the field training program. It seems like historically that is what has been happening. If you look back at the last few years, our police overtime has been in the 200,000s, and yet we've kept the budget at 120,000 the last few years. So I think historically we do see that there's always going to be an officer on the field training program, which causes us to have to fill that shift with overtime.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anyone else?
Great presentation, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one comment, Mayor Long, to respond to Councilmember Stanfield's question. I think, Aaron stated, I just want to make sure that it was clear. Our budget estimates for police overtime have been over 200,000, and this year was different. We estimated much lower, and so we just didn't see the savings from those positions being staffed that we expected, because we did have a certain amount of time those officers, weren't filling the shifts, like Aaron explained. But again, we've estimated over 200,000 every year, and so this year we just estimated significantly lower than we have in the past as well.
Any other questions for Aaron?
I was just
Madam
going to
Mayor.
echo Jeremy about Aaron's presentation. And looking through the staff report, I found it insightful and easy to track. So I think you did a great job.
Mike Lucy, did you have a question or comment?
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and I'd like to also say that you did a very good job, Aaron. Recently, there's been discussion at the state level, at least, to postpone property tax payments in the April due dates. I know that this is just something that's going to be talked about coming up. Hopefully that won't happen. I think it'll jeopardize security of essential services, of course, for a lot of agencies, lots of cities, as well as school districts. Can you address that a little bit as far as the possibility that it could happen?
Well, the one thing that I will note is that they did something very similar with our sales tax, where they allowed businesses a certain period of time to not have to pay, and then eventually they had to make those payments up. And so, one of the things that's really nice with the city is that we have a healthy reserve. So we can buy ourselves 6 months without receiving those revenues as long as we end up getting them. I think we can still pay our expenses for 6 months to a year before we receive those revenues. So I would say if this does end up going through, as long as they're not completely canceling the payments and they're just delaying them, say 6 months or a year, and we end up getting those revenues at some point, we should be okay.
Thank you. And then one other question. A week ago from tomorrow, the City Council or the Board of Soups had a meeting, and apparently we have been additionally funded for the Drug Task Force officer in the amount of over $58,000. And as I see this, those figures have not been added into this mid-year report.
Yeah, I actually meant to point that out on one of the slides. We did budget, and I can bring it up here just to show. We did estimate that we were going to have to fund the Measure Z fund, which is the fund that we have our school resource officer and drug task force officer funded out of, about $30,000. That was the shortfall we were showing and what we budgeted for. So I'm bringing it up here. So here it is right here. Transfer to Measure Z fund. We were originally estimating $28,000 that the general fund was going to have to pick up. And now we're estimating that we're not going to have to because the county did authorize the full 58. Now the second benefit of that we're not seeing here is that the extra $30,000 that the county approved is going to allow the school resource officer to do more outreach and to work some more overtime. So we kind of stripped that overtime back because we didn't want the general fund to have to pick up the full 58. And now it'll allow the officer to go out and do more of that work that we originally had that officer planned to do when we first asked the Measure Z fund to fund that position.
Excellent. And I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors and in particular Michelle Bushnell for taking the lead on that and approving that budget item for us. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Thank you, Aaron. Great presentation as always, and thank you for answering all of our questions. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Moving on to oral comments from the public, I believe that we now have the number that you can call to comment to the council on the screen. We can't see that from our end, but I am told that it is there. So if you would like to comment, please call the number on the screen and you will be, we'll be able to listen to what you have to say. And I do know that we have one person waiting to comment. So Matt, are you here?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Lieutenant Matt Eberhardt. I wanted to talk tonight during public comment and just take a moment of your time and share some information. As you know, the department went through 3 leadership transitions in the last year, with the chief retiring, an interim chief, and also the hiring of Chief Casey Day this last July. In my position as a patrol commander, it's important that I maintain an awareness of patrol operations, personnel's perceptions, and the department morale. In privately checking in with personnel, I received several positive comments regarding Chief Day's leadership and the impact he is making on the department and our personnel. I feel that it is appropriate for me to share a few comments I received and express our gratitude to Chief Day and to the city for hiring him. The following are comments that I have received from our personnel. He is connected and committed. He demonstrates leadership. He has a high level of professionalism and integrity. He is a confident leader who is continually impressing us. He follows through on what he says, and he expects the same from us. He is a great fit for the city. We respect him. We feel valued. In the short time that he has been here, I have seen a transformation within the department that I never thought possible. And those were just some of the positive comments that I had received when checking with our personnel. I'd like to close with one from myself. With his leadership, I've seen employees engaged, invested, working the hardest I've ever seen in all the years that I've worked here in Fortuna. And the fact that this is occurring during 2020 and continues into 2021 speaks highly of Chief Day and our personnel. And I just thought that, last meeting, the chief gave his presentation, and I felt it appropriate for me to check in with staff and to share that with the council.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate that because we don't always get to hear what's going on behind the scenes, and it's really nice to know that the morale is improved and people are all on the same team again. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone have any questions or comments for Matt?
I appreciate his comments from someone who's in the department and has been there, and I see a lot of the same things from the outside looking in. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Did we get any other calls from anyone that wants to address the council?
No, I haven't seen anybody come on.
Okay, then we'll close public comment and move on to the consent calendar. We have 4 items. Does anyone wish to pull anything?
Can I pull item number 2 just for a question?
Of course. So our 4 items are city council minutes, report of disbursements, continuing the declaration of the existence of a local emergency in response to COVID-19, and authorizing the chief of police to sign and submit a letter of support for American Legion to obtain a license through the Department of Alcoholic Beverage and Control. Anyone besides Jeremy have anything to pull? All right, Jeremy, question?
Under item number 2, report of disbursements, I noticed that a couple of the vendors, one I'm going to pick on particularly, and forgive me if this offends anyone, but Terminex is a corporation, and we just recently welcomed a new pest control company into the city limits in a new building on 7th and Main Street, Accurate Termite. And I didn't know if there was any weight given to business owners within the city limits of Fortuna, or if we just have to go with the lowest bid possible when we select our vendors. That was my only question.
And typically we can't give a local preference, but what we can do every year is if we think there's other firms that can be more competitive, then what we can do is put out another request for proposal or request for quotes depending on the amount. So that's certainly something we can look into if there's another, firm such as pest control that could do the job potentially cheaper. But at the end of the year, we can request quotes and then start a new service contract for the following year. So thanks for the information. That's something that we'll consider as we move forward. And then also, I think we have a couple of different pest controls. We can also look at combining all of them together as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
I'll make
All
a
right.
motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
and Mayor Long.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to city council business, we have approved supplemental budget request and amend the organizational chart for a part-time economic development specialist with COVID-19 relief emphasis. Merritt?
Thank you, Mayor Long. So currently, there are many businesses in Fortuna struggling because of the COVID pandemic. A primary concern is that we could lose businesses in the long term if those businesses don't make it through this tough time. And one of the sectors of the business community that we're particularly concerned about are those service industries that have to have in person, such as restaurants. So many businesses, from what we're hearing, that they're not interested in taking on more debt, especially in this certain time, and that they're more interested in grants or loans that convert to grants to aid their financial recovery. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funds are made available through from the federal government to the state through the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Some allocations are being set aside for cities that want to undertake activities to provide relief for businesses and individuals affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, there's approximately $400,000 that was allocated to the city of Fortuna in the first 3 cycles, and as of yet, we have not applied for any of these funds. It is also expected that as more state and federal funding becomes available to address the economic impacts from this pandemic, that there will be continue to be more grant program opportunities into the future. The timelines on developing programs to support businesses or individuals and submitting an application is relatively short. Many smaller communities such as Fortuna have not sought these funds because administering CDBG grants and the activities that under them are very time consuming and labor intensive. The city has a limited window to hold scoping meetings and determine how best to make use of the funds and ultimately adopt a resolution with the programs that we want to undertake. Staff is requesting approval of a part-time limited duration employee to focus exclusively on preparing and submitting CDBG applications and developing business support programs, rent support programs, or other programs identified as eligible under the CDBG COVID assistance funding. We have already proceeded with this hiring on a temporary basis as part of our disaster response. However, we wanted to make sure to bring this to the council for transparency and to share our efforts with the public and obtain formal approval for the supplemental budget request tonight. And so staff is requesting this position be funded using CDBG program income funds from the general administration category, which currently has a balance of $128,000. This would be a part-time temporary position without benefits and is expected not to exceed $25,000. A supplemental budget request is attached to the staff report that reflects this request. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So again, using the number on your screen, if you want to comment on this item, please call us. Does anyone from the council have any questions for Merritt?
I had a couple. First, in the motion, it says for pay and benefits.
Yeah, and so the benefits that are there, a part-time temporary position doesn't receive medical, dental, and the other benefits that we normally categorize, but we still have to pay workers' comps and some of the other payroll items that aren't part of their salary. So in the staff report, that's what was meant by benefits, not the benefits that are normally afforded to a full-time regular employee.
Okay, and then one other thing, should it be put in here what the pay rate is?
If the council has a question, we started this employee at the top of the senior administrative assistant pay scale, even though it's a temporary position. Our plan for the long term in that amount is $26.67. For the long term, again, this is just for immediate response. If we're going to continue having somebody on to do as an economic development specialist, then I assume that we have to advertise that position and go through the regular recruitment process. But again, the effort here is really to focus on some of these economic development programs and funding opportunities through CDBG. And so again, we just wanted to act quickly. And so we did what we needed to get somebody on board in the short term.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, I have a comment and a question. First off, I think this is a great project to bring somebody on board to assist our businesses in obtaining some of these funds. I think it's a move that's in the right direction, and it's utilizing some of the CDBG funds that, as you mentioned earlier today, Merritt, that oftentimes don't get used. My question is the $25,000 the total budget amount for the position, for the part-time position?
Yeah, so that's I don't know if that's the total budget. I think Aaron took a look at that, our finance director, and gave us an estimate. But if what we're requesting with this budget request is that the cost for that position does not exceed $25,000 over the next 6 months.
Okay.
So that's an upper end. And we don't expect to be giving any salary increases. We fixed it. We set it for 6 months. And it's also a part-time employee. It's not a full-time employee. So this employee can only work up to 29 hours on a regular basis. So again, it's also not a full-time position.
Thank you.
I had one more question.
Go ahead.
Will this person be working with Diana at FBID? Because I know that FBID has applied for some grants to make sure that they're not doubling up on the same ones.
Yeah. So Diana may be able to speak to that too, but it depends on the types of programs that we do. One of the more common programs is employee retention or paycheck protection programs. And so I think FBID's been really helping with some of the PPP or the paycheck protection programs. But one of the things that we'll have to do is we'll have to come to council and we'll have a few ideas. And what we want to do is target the programs that help our businesses with the least strings attached, the least amount of, little or no borrowing. And so one of the good things about being late is we can model some of the programs that some of the other communities are going after. So we want to find a program that will have a loan that converts to a grant to support employee retention, and then business expenses such as rent and other expenses that they have. We'll be bringing a few different ideas, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the first one will just be the direct financial assistance. We'll also be looking at other options to do improvements for businesses, like helping to provide money for outdoor dining spaces, or potentially accessibility improvements for businesses that are trying to accommodate employees outside of their normal place of business. So, it'll be a public process, and it's called a scoping meeting. So our businesses will have an opportunity. We'll present probably 3-4 ideas of how we could focus these monies, and then we want to hear from our businesses. And I will say that the person we have hired for this position is Jennifer O'Reilly. She has worked in the local community for a while. She's very used to working with Diana Rios with FBID and Renee Lindsay from the Chamber, and I know she's talking to both of them. And so our hope is that we can really have a coordinated effort with, working with FBID and the Chamber. And I have no doubt that that's going to happen, and they're going to be key to getting business owners involved and participating in that scoping meeting and telling us what they want. We don't want it to be what city staff wants. We want it to be what helps our businesses. And I really believe that FBID and the Chamber are going to be key to getting us the input we need and helping to weigh in on that very question.
Thank you, Merritt. Anyone from the public? Diana, I think you want to speak.
Yes, thank you. We're so excited. We love working with Jennifer O'Reilly Brown, and we're excited that she's going to be able to assist our businesses. She has a unique perspective because she helped approve a lot of the business licenses in the back end with Liz. So we're really excited. She's already called, I know, Renee and myself to do some brainstormings on some projects. And then we've been assisting businesses one-on-one through some grant processes. So we've been able to capture some information and kind of see some need, which has been exciting to kind of give her some ideas based off of that. So we're excited to help in any way we can assist our businesses. And we thank you guys for this opportunity. Thank Merritt for just running with it and everybody's side. So we just want to say thank you. And we're here to assist businesses. Jeremy has a pretty lengthy report to give at the end of the meeting. I could do it during public comment, but I thought I'll have the council rep do it. But grant rounds for, just really quick, grant rounds for California open tomorrow. We dropped off 25 packets today and sent out an email to 800 businesses. So hopefully people will start calling. I think I got 4 new emails right now that people want to help. So that's exciting.
Mayor Long, just, to follow on what Diana's saying, we've been really fortunate to have some of the other cities that are already working on these types of programs like Arcata and Eureka provide assistance and staff time to let us know what they're doing and share some of their forms and some of their public meeting documents. And it's super helpful. It's a very tricky project, program to navigate, and, having the other cities be willing to assist us and identify programs and share different forms and waiver forms and processes is really helpful. And, I think we'd be really struggling without some of the support from the other cities. So I'd just like to thank them for doing that.
Absolutely. The collaboration always makes it easier for everybody. So, Sienna, do we have anyone else from the public?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments from the council?
I just wanted to say that I think that we have the opportunity we have a person in the proposed person for the position who knows the community, especially the business community, and we have the opportunity to help our businesses with this funding, and it was designed for this. We have the plan to put it to a targeted use so where it makes the most good in the business community, and I think we should move ahead with this.
All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I would move to approve a part-time, limited duration economic development specialist with emphasis on COVID-19 relief, and approve a supplemental budget request for $25,000 of CDBG program income, general administration funds to pay for the pay and benefits.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Sienna, we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes, thank you. Next, we have city manager's report. Merritt?
Thank you. I'll quickly review the meeting schedule. Our next regular city council meeting will be at 6 p.m. on February 16th. Our next planning commission will be on February 9th. It's also at 6 p.m. Our next Measure E meeting will be on March 16th at 5:30 p.m. And as our finance director stated in his presentation tonight, that'll be for staff to present the recommended projects for Measure E funding and for the committee to review all of those projects. And then the upcoming Roner Community Recreation and Park District meeting is this Wednesday, February 3rd at 2:30 p.m. Just a few items on the verbal report. Again, in line with our economic development specialist item, I am very excited to be working with Jen O'Reek on this. She's brought me a list of project ideas, and without a lot of direction, she's really kind of getting up and running, and she has a proposed list of projects that we're going to narrow down and bring to council in the near future. We're hoping to hit the March 5th deadline for an economic development assistance application. Been talking with Recology about our franchise agreement and how best to comply with some of the requirements that are coming on from SB 1383. And so we've been talking about this for some time, and we agreed to a tentative meeting schedule. So starting March 1st, I think at least once a month, probably for 2 or 3 meetings, we'll be bringing initially kind of a review of some of the regulations affecting our solid waste franchise agreement and some of the ideas we have for addressing those new regulations, and then ultimately bring the council cost information so we can start taking a look at how we can modify that franchise agreement to remain in compliance with some of the state regulations that we're dealing with for both greenhouse gas reduction and waste reduction. I also sat in on the Chamber of Commerce meeting today that featured Madeline DeLapp of the Humboldt Growers Alliance. It was a good reminder that it's probably time to proceed with the cannabis workshop that the council requested that we make. We had this tentatively scheduled for last April, and we were waiting out the coronavirus until such a time that we could have in-person meetings again. And it's been over a year, and we think it'd be a good time to go ahead and proceed with that. So, with the council's blessing, and I'll pull the council next week, we'd like to try to proceed with that. And right now I'm thinking as soon as the second meeting in March or the first meeting in April. I've been staying in touch with our elected officials regarding the CRV redemption issue, and we don't have anything out there yet that I've seen that's real promising. But again, we are very specific with our request for items that we wanted, such as allowing appointments, increasing the cap size, and allowing those CRV redemption sites to be recertified with just a letter. We did talk to Recology. They said they would reopen if some of those provisions were met. And so we're hoping that our elected officials at the state level can get us some temporary relief so those facilities can open back up. There has been some talk of pilot projects, and grants of up to $1 million for 5 communities, but it's still staff's opinion that we really need to see a relaxing of those requirements rather than a pilot project for a select few communities. So I've reminded Assemblymember Wood's office of that, and we'll continue to talk to other elected officials to make sure that what we really want to see is just a suspension on the restrictions on those CRV redemption facilities to a point we can get ours back, our ones that already exist, to open again. Unfortunately, there are ongoing abatement issues at the residence. That's been an ongoing nuisance at 2386 Acacia. This project was the subject of past abatement activities. If the council remembers, we did a big cleanup there. There was also vandalism and a fire that compromised the structure. So it's likely in the near future that we'll have to abate that safety hazard, demolish the building, and there will be additional costs. And we're working with our city attorney and code compliance officer to get that done. And at this point, it's probably the best thing just to have that structure completely disappear and have some vacant land. And that's likely going to be the outcome. There's not really a responsible person who's dealing with that property, but I hate to give the council the bad news, but it's going to cost us some more money before that's dealt with. And then I just wanted to let the council know that we're making good progress on the design of the new police facility at the intersection of Ronerville Road and Newburgh Road. We reviewed the schematic design that was brought to us from the consultant. We've been making sure to do a pretty comprehensive review and include the sergeants, lieutenant, and our police chief, and make sure that everybody in the department has a look at that. We provided comments, had a great meeting with our consultant, and we expect to have revised schematic design back fairly soon, and with the goal of having a building permit by late spring and early summer. So again, I'm really pleased on the progress, and we'll look forward to bringing that back to the council once we have a little bit more detail that we can share and an updated cost estimate. We do have a cost estimate and other items, so I think that'll probably be something the council really wants to take a close look at and review. But we're very optimistic that this is a project we're going to be able to get completed and have enough to fund. So that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Merritt. Any questions for Merritt before we move on?
Merritt, maybe you could add a little bit on who's going to be the chamber speaker next week.
Yeah, so my plan is to present, the chamber asked that I present a state of the city, and that's quite a long presentation that I usually work very closely with some of our council members and the mayor on. But what I hope to do is give a summary of kind of our overall financial pictures and some of the highlights and what some of the focuses are in the city, and really just share some of the bigger projects and some of the bigger efforts that we're going after right now. Again, a number of grants out there for different types of park development. We have some big roadway projects coming up, but I hope to make it a little bit more entertaining by just really showing the cool things that we're working on. And as you heard in the mid-year budget, at least it's not as bad as we projected. It could still get bad, but share the economic picture and again the big pursuits and projects. So it'll be scaled back and won't be quite to the same extent that we presented to the whole chamber in the past. And be happy to, if anybody on the council wants to get a sneak peek at that, let me know. I would say it's very much still under development and can be modified, being that there's 1 week until I have to have that completed.
Thank you, Merritt.
Anything else? All right, moving on to future agenda items. Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move on to city council reports. Council member Mike Johnson.
Remember to unmute first. So, we had a HCOG meeting the 21st, and that was worked on the REAP grant and how it's going to be implemented. We're going for the whole $685,000 that's left over, and this will be HCD, Housing Community Development, is going to work with us if we have any questions, how it's going to be done. There is a senior planner position at HCOG that is going to be a coordinator, and we'll be working with each planning department for the different agencies. Liz has been a part of this from the beginning. And so we're looking forward to that and be able to make kind of a single track, easy to do development plan throughout the county. Also, we had an update on the safety corridor. The May CTC meeting will be looking at funding for the safety corridor construction. On the last chance grade, the geotech drilling on that is 99% complete, and the environmental document continues, and they're looking to have that ready as a draft in 2022. And we look forward to that getting done. It's a long road to work on, but as we all know, that's an important piece of roadway, and it's Crescent City, we do things around here, that's a suburb almost. We're back and forth. It's a local road getting there. We also had elections, and Supervisor Bass was elected to the CalCog position and has the third seat for the executive committee. Mayor Susan Seaman was elected to vice chair, and I was elected as chair for this year. And we look forward to providing a service to the community, Humboldt County, for transportation, and now with our new plan in housing, and for our roadways. And we are still working on the regional transportation plan update, and look to have that done in the spring and out for a review. And that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Moving on to our other Mike.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Over the last 2 weeks, I've had my new council training through Cal Cities. It was a very good training. It included a mock city council meeting at the city of Malfunction Junction. And I'm glad to report that we generally don't make some of the missteps that we saw in that skit. It was very well done too, by the way. And the training was good, even if it was Zoom. It's interesting to note, or at least that it was interesting for me, that Cal City's mission is to expand and protect local control for cities. It's not necessarily what we see, especially when they promote or don't oppose at least some of the laws coming out of our state legislature. Cal City's strategic priority regarding housing says nothing about taking action to limit the governor or the legislature's takeover of our local control, specifically in housing, as Sue mentioned, I think, on the last council meeting. So I do believe that Cal Cities can do more in that regard. But it was excellent training, and I'm glad that I went. It was a great update from when I attended quite a few years ago. On a different note, I was selected as the new regular city member commissioner for LAFCO in the Mayor's Select Committee meeting last week. I spoke about during the meeting possible upcoming annexation issues that our city might be involved in, as well as the possible Runner Park District boundary expansion that they'll be looking at. And I think it was, the mayors felt that it was a positive factor to have a Fortuna representative on the commission. So I do thank Madam Mayor for your recommendation and your part in my selection. And I'm looking forward to, again, being on, serving on LAFCO. And then last, on January 28th, I attended my first Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting. That was last Thursday. It was a real busy day for me. It started out at 8:30 with the Cal Cities training, and that went until 3 o'clock. And then I had the Mayor's Select Committee meeting that I attended starting at 3, and then the Energy Authority meeting that started at 3:30. So, and that went until after 6 o'clock. So it was a long day for me, especially for somebody who's supposed to be retired. I was able to be selected for the committee with the Energy Committee for the long duration storage, which will go hand in hand with some of the potential future projects that we have or are looking at, such as a solar array, as well as self-generating battery banks to provide our city energy generating ability to possibly sell even some of the energy back to PG&E. There are quite a few projects that the Energy Authority have on an ongoing basis, which a lot of them I have no familiarization with, but I'll acquaint myself with them and report back in our future meetings. It's good to be back on the Energy Authority and involved in the cutting edge technology that on energy that the authority is all about. So I had a busy couple of weeks, a busy last Thursday, and glad to be on LAFCO as well as the Energy Authority. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jeremy, I understand yours is lengthy.
I'll read fast. I appreciate Diana. I send her an email and she's great about sending me highlights of what FBID's been up to. So she makes me look good in my reports. But item number 1 is the California Relief Small Business Grant Round 2 opens tomorrow. She already mentioned that, but I need to reiterate that because of how important it is for our local businesses. It opens tomorrow on the 2nd and closes promptly on February 8th. So if businesses are interested in these grant funds, there's over $500,000 available. And FBID delivered 25 packets out today to small businesses and sent a mass email out to all 850 membership or business members on their email list. But you just have to remember that February 8th is going to be here next Monday. So it's critical that if you need support, contact the Business Improvement District office at 725-9261 for more information and for assistance. The first grant round FBID business support recap was 10 restaurants for a total of $170,000. Salons and beauty salons, 6 of them for a total of $40,000. Construction companies, 2 of them totaling $20,000. 5 retail stores totaling $75,000, and manufacturing 2 companies at $20,000. So I'm really grateful for the work and the efforts going on there to support our businesses during COVID. Would love to give her a pat on the back and to continue to work hard doing that for our businesses. A little side note, my daughter works for her, and the conversations at the dinner table are, Diana she wears the heart or her heart on her sleeve for these businesses. And my Allison says, you've done everything you can. There's nothing else you can do. They put you on standby until the next round. And Diana's like, I got to call him and let him know. And I got to tell him that go ahead and the next round's coming. And you could just tell her passion in her job and supporting local business. So I just want to give her a pat on the back for that. Item number 2, this is the last month for the marketing campaign regarding FBID. The FBID is currently running for 20 different zip codes, promoting our businesses, our events, our region, and our community spirit through the Humboldt Lodging Alliance grant. In its first month, our ads have been seen by over 5 million times and clicked on 65,784 times. It's exciting and allows us to apply for more funding because of its success. Trying to cut this short. This is going, so there was a very exciting, there's a giveaway as part of the grant that starts next Monday on the 1st. Hopefully the giveaway and the marketing grant will affect local businesses, and the raffle will include almost $10,000 of hotel stays and $5,000 in additional funds for local companies. So really grateful for that opportunity. During the downtown business association meeting recently, they're hoping to get more downtown businesses to participate, more businesses engaged, asking more questions, getting more businesses gives a better representation of their desires for downtown. And if nothing else, more businesses in the loop on what's going on with their FBID assessments and that are passed through to the Downtown Business Association. So really want to make sure businesses are engaged and seeing the value of the dollars that they're assessed each year along with their business license. Then lastly, on FBID's front, they did a police department walk around, but it was, today was police department walkabout, but it was moved to next week when the chief is back. And tomorrow is her monthly meeting with our city manager, Merritt Perry. So that's it for FBID, but I just want to tell her great job and keep up the good work supporting our local businesses during this crazy pandemic time. And the other items that I have to report on are just a quick meeting with Rex Bone contacted me and invited me to breakfast with the chance to visit our second district supervisor, Supervisor Bushnell, and great meeting. Really enjoyed getting to know a little bit about her, and she feels like it's really going to be a great asset and partnership in our relationship with Fortuna. I see that she's on the meeting call today, so welcome, congratulations, and thank you for reaching out and you know, making sure we know that you have our backs and we have yours, etc. The other thing is I did attend a meeting. It's a town hall meeting. Anybody could have attended, and there was quite a few participants, but with regards to the coronavirus and Senator Mike McGuire, just thought it was really good to kind of listen in on what the state's doing to support our locals. I noticed over the weekend, and everybody could read this on Facebook or our Lost Coast, but that we had a pretty big vaccination cycle that went through the medical community here recently, and just I know it's not going out as quickly as everybody would hope it, but it seems like for what we've got to work with, Humboldt County's rising to the occasion again. And then lastly, I wanted to give a quick shout out. I don't know if this is stealing your thunder, Madam Mayor, but the Diaz family needs our support and our prayers. And I just want to say how proud I am to live in Fortuna. They did a fundraiser online and on Facebook, and the way people showed up in their donations and the way people showed up in their generosity for the items that were donated in an online auction was heartwarming. Again, Fortuna, I'm always so proud of this community and how they just give. So I know it's not necessarily city business, but it sure does contribute to what makes Fortuna special. Thanks.
Absolutely. Tammy. Tammy, you're muted.
Sorry. First of all, on January 29th, Fortuna Police Department arrested a 29-year-old McKinley man who had reportedly sexually victimized a student from Toddy Thomas Middle School in Fortuna between 2017 and 2018. The information, let's see, wait a minute, what do I have here? Oh, this finally came forward just recently, and the Fortuna Police Department was notified in January of this event. Fortuna's school resource officer, who was funded by Measure Z, and Fortuna's detectives, who are funded by Measure E, worked on this case diligently and made an arrest within 2 weeks. I just wanted to point this out because without these two officers, it would have probably taken much longer to bring this case, to an arrest. So I'm really proud of how quickly they worked on this and got this arrest taken care of. And these positions are coming up. The school resource officer and the drug task force officer's positions are coming up for renewal. The lieutenant and chief and I have been working on the application to get this submitted. And then the meetings will start with the committee in March. So anybody who sees a supervisor or any of the committee members, let them know how important these positions are to the whole community around here. We have, Michelle, our new supervisor. I've been talking to her about this and she strongly supports these, and a few of the other supervisors do too. So hopefully these will be reallocated. I was going to mention that also that we did last year, our funds were cut by $58,000 due to anticipated budget cuts, but they came in above what they expected. And as reported previously by Mike, we did receive the additional $58,000 that we applied for last year, which is nice because then it gives our school resource officer back the ability to do a little bit more with our students. I think that was my full report. Yes, and I wanted Merritt to talk about the chamber lunch next week, and he did that. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So I'm meeting out. I'm thinking February looks a lot better than January. We had our regular REDEC meeting as well as an executive meeting last week. I did get reelected to the executive committee when we chose our positions. And we had another housing, this is a long one, I always forget it. Housing, Community, and Economic Development Committee meeting because we didn't finish our business in the first 3 hours. So we had another 2-hour meeting to go through some of that. And it's just really scary what those senators sit around and think about. So one of the items that we discussed the most at the last meeting was the fact that they want to have a by right bill so that you can build a duplex. And then as soon as the 2 houses are complete, you can split the lot. And it can be anywhere in your city. So for instance, a 6,000 square foot lot, which is our city minimum, can now be split into 2 3,000 square foot lots, and the city has no local control. And so you can also go up to, Forest Hills or some of the Buena Vista, some of the nicer areas in town that have 4,000 to 5,000 square foot homes, and you can build these tiny little duplexes. There's no size limit, and then you can split those lots. And so it just floors me that the committee doesn't think there's anything wrong with some of this. And I don't know if it's because some of them live in big cities and everybody's already piled on top of each other and they don't get rural environments and rural living. And there were, I think, 11 of us that voted no, and the committee itself decided to go with oppose unless amended. But honestly, there's no amendments that can fix it. So their thoughts were we still want to be at the table and maybe we'll oppose it later on. But right now they wanted to keep the conversation going. And I understand that, but I also look at the whole thing and I said, what is there to talk about? It's basically they're stealing local control. That's the bottom line. And so many of the cities are just willing to go along with that. And boy, it's a struggle. I mean, it's like you want to be on those policy committee meetings because you want to know what's going on and you want to have a say. But at the end of the day, you just feel really frustrated that the people who make these bills don't live in this world. They make the bills when they're sitting in their glass house on some big, estate, and they don't worry about what is actually happening to the city. So that's frustrating. I'm glad to be on the committee, but frustrated as well. We had an oversight committee meeting for the redevelopment funds. The ROPS and Fortuna and Eureka are the only two cities remaining that have reports. City of Eureka messed theirs up, so we have to have another meeting tomorrow to approve. I can't even think. So we have to approve theirs again. And even though it was over $2 million and the difference was like $1,300, because we approved an amount that isn't the amount that they are going to submit to the Department of Finance, we have to have another meeting. So we'll be having that tomorrow. I attended my last LAFCO meeting for a while, thanks to Mike Losi. So because Mike was selected as the regular commissioner, I resigned as the alternate, and Gordon Johnson from Riadel will be the alternate. So that was a good result. When the meeting started out, I wasn't sure that was what was going to happen, but they seem to understand that if Fortuna is going to have more activity than Riadel, because the other one asking for the position was Riadel, and he was a great guy as well. I mean, we really couldn't have gone wrong, but it's nicer to have a Fortuna representative on there if we're going to have some projects coming up. I was able to attend coffee with the chief, with Matt Eberhardt, and we just kind of talked about what makes Fortuna Fortuna. So that was kind of fun. And it was nice to sit outside at the River Lodge and just chat for a while and get out of the office. So I do apologize for getting up and down, but my little dog Dixie doesn't seem to know that we have a meeting and it's important. So there's that. And I think that, and I got selected from the Mayor's Select Committee to be on the RAN committee through the Sheriff's Department. They decide how to spend some fees that come in from live scan, and I'm not sure what else. So I'll be having some kind of meeting sometime whenever they schedule one. So with that, I think we're all meetinged out. We do have a closed session, and it's conference with real property negotiator pursuant to section 54956.8 of the government code, vacant land along Eel River and 1320 Riverwalk Drive. The negotiating parties are the city manager, Merritt Perry, for the city of Fortuna, and Land MK as negotiating parties under negotiation is price and terms of payment. So if no one has any further comments, we can have a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Madam Mayor, I have one comment to make regarding the local control issues and the what we do as a city council, our elected body for Fortuna, and our membership and participation in Cal Cities and the committees that we serve on, all the way up through into the county level, means something. And the mantra that's coming from Cal Cities now that we should pick up is that if we're not at the table, we are on the menu, meaning that they will consume us one way or another, regulatory, fiduciary, however. And this is an opportunity, and we are on the front line of maintaining that local control and keeping Fortuna the community that it is. And so we need to be engaged. That's what I would say. And thank you.
And I feel, 3 of us out of 5 are on committees, and I'm actually on 2 by kind of a default thing, but it is important, and I'm really glad that people have stepped up and are willing to serve, because it's just more extra meetings. But you're right, we do need to be engaged. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Sienna.